Hi, everyone. Welcome to your first podcast in which we give you tips about how to be successful at San Jose State University and beyond. I'm Dr. Étienne Brown from the Philosophy Department.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Johnston from the Biology Department.
And I am Dr. Walter Adams, also from the Biology Department.
All right, so what we've planned for you today is a short podcast, first episode about how to stay on top of your studies during COVID-19. So what we're going to do is that we're going to give you 6 tips to stay on top of your studies during COVID-19. By experience, I tend to think that my students are facing kind of 2 challenges right now. So kind of all of the tips are going to relate to those 2 challenges. So the first challenge is really to kind of stay motivated in your studies. It's kind of a weird time, so it's difficult to do that. The second problem is trying to stay organized. So sometimes it's difficult when you don't really have a regular class schedule anymore to stay organized. So kind of all of the 6 tips kind of relate to that. So here we go. I'm going to start with the first tip. It's kind of a tip I live by. It's a very important principle for me. It might seem simple to you, but it really helps me a lot. So what I do is I try to reserve the hardest task that I have to do in the day, or the task for which I feel the least motivated, for the period where I feel I worked best, or it's easier for me. So for me, it's always mornings. I'm really a morning person. So I really reserve the hardest task in my day for the morning. Often they tend to be creative tasks. I find it hard to kind of come up with ideas and to write. So I reserve that for the morning. And then I reserve the easiest task, the kind of more passive task, reading, grading, maybe commenting on discussion board, maybe studying for an exam for the afternoons. And I feel that doing that allows me to be done with the hardest task fairly early in the day, and that really makes me feel good about myself because then I know that at noon maybe I'm already done with the hardest task that I wanted to accomplish. So that's my first tip. Dr. Adams, Dr. Johnson, do you have anything to add about this?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of maximizing your efficiency. Last semester, I taught early in the morning, and I teach a 7:30 a.m. Class, and I always felt so accomplished because by 8:45 I had already taught my class or one of my classes for the day. So I definitely think that when you can strategically position your work at your high functioning time, it really does help your overall productivity.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good tip because it prevents you from procrastinating, right? You get that hardest thing out of the way first, and then you can have a big win for the rest of the day. That's excellent.
All right. Second tip, very simple tip, less complicated than the other one. Keep a to-do list. I keep a to-do list every day, a physical one. You don't have to use one. You can use any kind of app, or you can just open a Google Doc. And what I do is that I basically write everything I have to do in a day on this to-do list. So today I have recorded a podcast written on it, take care of discussion boards on Canvas, grade papers. I don't look forward to that, but I have to do it. Probably I'm not going to get to do all of those tasks if I'm realistic with you on today, but that's okay because I have a system. So what I do is that at the end of every day, when I'm not done with a task, I just transfer it to the to-do list for the next day, and I kind of end my day by preparing the to-do list for the next day. And I think that I do that for 2 reasons. It helps me stay structured. I think it's a nice way to start your day. You already know when we wake up in the morning, maybe have a cup of coffee, what you're gonna be doing. And it's a nice way to end your day too, because then when I've written my to-do list for the next day, I really feel that I can stop working and stop thinking about what I have to organize. So it actually helps me to take a break in the evening and stop focusing on work. If I don't do that, I'm constantly wondering, what am I going to be doing tomorrow? I need to organize my work. So it's hard for me to just stop working and kind of relax. So that's my second tip.
Yeah, again, a to-do list makes a lot of sense. I think mine has definitely fluctuated into different forms during this pandemic. I used to plan out my weeks, one entire week at a time, usually a week in advance. And that was largely driven by when I was going to do research or mentor students. And now that has shifted a lot, but I still think having some kind of structure, whether it's in the form of a to-do list or calendar, is very helpful for staying on point.
All right. Tip number 3, try to maintain a regular work schedule. I know that this might be very hard. You might not be in a situation where you can focus on your studies every day. There might be some days where you set aside to, work or to take care of some relatives. You might set some days apart because you just want to relax. Because I really think that one thing that students have to learn is to learn to do a little bit of work every day instead of trying to do a big kind of chunk of work all at once. It's tempting to do that with papers, kind of keep them for 1 day or 2 days before the deadline. Same thing with exams, starting reviewing. But I really think that if you can get used to a little bit of work every day, then you'll feel that over a week, you made a lot of progress on your work. So here's one tip. If you can, if your schedule allows it, and it's important for us and for professors to say that we understand that maybe your life or your student experience has been disturbed by COVID-19, and I think it's part of our job to try to adapt to this new reality. But if you can attend live lectures or live meetings that your professors are organizing, I think it's really a good way to kind of maintain structure and maintain a regular work schedule. Makes the course kind of feels real. And what you can do is try to kind of group the tasks that you have to do around that lecture. So for instance, I have discussion boards with my lectures. Students have to write on them to get participation point. And I always give them the advice, if you attend a Zoom lecture, at the end of the Zoom lecture, you can take 5 more minutes, go on the discussion board, write something, and then you're done with that. So maintaining a regular work schedule would be my 3rd tip. I'm going to ask Dr. Adams and Dr. Justin if they have anything to add, or if should I move on to tip number 4?
No, I think that's really great. Write on the discussion board as soon as all of it's in the front of your head, because it'll be so much easier to just write something down and to start that conversation than to put it off because you have to do, whatever. Yeah, I have discussion boards for my classes as well for participation points. And I've noticed the discussion board hasn't been used as much now that we've gone through this pandemic, but it's a good use of, the opportunity to talk to those of you, classmates around you. And then also gives me a check. What did I not communicate clearly so I could talk about it again? But if no one's saying anything, I'm going to guess that they all understood it.
Right. So if you made it this far in the podcast, then the rest is going to be easy because those were the most boring tips. I think that the last 3 tips are going to be easier, more fun. So tip number 4, this really relates to my experience as a student. Try to find some study partners. Okay, I don't have to study for exams anymore, but I did when I was an undergrad. And what I did is that I befriended some people in my major, and they really became kind of allies during the 4 years that I spent. I did my undergrad at the University of Ottawa. We took about 90% of our courses together, this group of 3. Maybe you can't do that, you don't have to do that, but if you can find some people with whom you can study, just discuss the assignments, it suddenly becomes so much more fun and so much easier. So for instance, what we would do usually for exam is that we would review on individually on our side. Then we would meet together for a kind of collective study session. And it was extremely useful because sometimes my notes were not very good for a specific meeting. If you have a course where the professor doesn't put PowerPoint slides online or something like that, or doesn't use PowerPoint. And then my kind of study partners, which became my close friend, would allow to tell me, oh, there's another idea that you've missed, or I don't think this is exactly what the idea was. One thing that we did, if you can, of course, now you can use Zoom to do that. So there's different theories about what you should do before an exam. So some people are going to tell you just relax, kind of have a cup of coffee, breathe. That was not my approach, but I'm not saying that it's not a bad approach. So what we did usually is that we would meet together, the small group, and we'd do one last final revision right before the exam, so that we came in the exam with kind of everything in our heads, and really helped me maintain a kind of good GPA. Of course, depending on the kind of learner that you are in your own situation, you feel free to kind of adapt those tips or to reject some of them, but try not to do everything alone. It makes university so much more fun and so much easier.
Yeah, I think you really hit on an important aspect of the college experience. And while we know that social distancing measures and safety precautions will make this college experience unique in its own way. The idea of community is still something that is so important and achievable in this new environment. So reaching out to friends, classmates, using discussion boards to have these interactions is a great way to try and facilitate a study group and to solve problems together. Definitely contributes to a more immersive college experience.
All right, thanks, Dr. Adams. 2 last tips, and they're the most fun. They're the easiest. Tip number 5, take some breaks, okay? You're not a work machine. It's a difficult situation. You must be spending a lot of time indoors right now. I think it's really important to kind of take some breaks when you're working. Try to do some physical exercise if you can. That can be as simple as going for a walk outside. If you do so, don't forget to wear a mask. We're all in this together. I really think that you need to kind of feed oxygen to your brain to be able to accomplish the amount of work that you need to be successful in your studies. And also maybe you're kind of juggling with work and school at the same time. I think it's important to set some time aside. Of course, breaks are dangerous, right? Because they can lead to procrastination. So I think that one thing you can do, I mean, I'd be lying if I told you that at the beginning of my day, I know when I'm going to take my breaks precisely. I don't have kind of a break schedule. But every time I take a break, I do look at the clock and I tell myself, okay, I'm going to be back working on studying at this time. I'm allowing 15 minutes, or if it's lunch, I'm allowing myself an hour or something like that. So just try to integrate your breaks into your kind of your work schedule. They're very important. It's very important to sometimes just take a pause in order to be able to kind of push through the day. All right, I'm going to go with the last tip, and I'm going to ask Dr. Adams and Dr. Johnson if they have anything they want to add. That's a very important tip for me, and that tip is treat yourself. Reward yourself for the kind of hard work that you've been doing. You need to focus on your work and on your studies, but you need to focus on you. Think about who you are, what you love doing. Sometimes working for long periods of time, or even for short periods of time, kind of every day, can be very difficult. It's hard to motivate yourself to do that. And professors face this too. It's not something that's going to do away, right? Learning to deal with lack of motivation is just an important part of your kind of professional and life as a student. So in those moments when I find it very difficult to kind of keep focus on that extra paper that I told myself I would be grading today, I think about what I'm going to be doing when I'm done working. I do this all the time, okay? And that thing that you love doing, that you look forward to, that can be anything. That can be Zooming with a friend, that can be watching a TV show, that can be, doing yoga or cooking dinner. But try to set aside a time in your day where you can just be you and do something that you love. And when you kind of have these motivation crises during your workday, you can just take a deep breath, focus on what you're going to do later as kind of a reward. Think about continuing to work so that when you stop working, you're going to be able to indulge in the things that you like while feeling proud about the amount of work that you've accomplished. So I think that leisure and spending time with the people that you love are an absolutely key feature of having success in your studies and your professional life. Set time aside for yourself. So that's maybe my most important tip of the 6 tips. Dr. Adam,
favorite tip.
Go ahead.
That was my favorite tip, Dr. Brown. I'm glad that you give me permission to treat myself. I shall do that more.
All right, this is all I have for you for today. We're trying to keep those podcast episodes quite short so that they're manageable if you want to listen to them, to watch them. Thank you very much. More is coming. Thank you for being there.
Bye.
Until next time.